If I'm going to practice a self-responsible posturing, that is to recognize someone's deep essential energy first, so go self first in my approach to life. And if I'm going to take care of myself, of my health and my well-being, if someone chooses not to like me for whatever reason, that's their problem. It's nothing to do with me. If I don't like that, or if I don't like them, my first response is to look for their holding energy, their neutral self-presence, and look at that from my self-presence. And if I find that I don't like them, my first response inwardly is to check my self energy and what's coming up. So a U-turn, we know this as U-turn in IFS. So what's coming up in me, to inquire with inside myself, am I responding with something to defend a feeling that I believe that I shouldn't feel, I can't feel, it's too much, I did feel it before, but I've buried it away for whenever that was. However, parts of me have learnt to hide that feeling. So therefore, I'm completely out of practice with feeling whatever feeling that's been put away and hidden, even though my system is already holding it. It's holding that feeling and whatever it's holding that decided to do that, decided it was too much, to try and bury it away somewhere. The energy, my self-energy, is already holding that and whatever it's taken on board in my whole system. The fact that I'm breathing is evidence of that. But there's a part that believes I can't hold that feeling. So that's my cue right there. Something's been highlighted. If I'm getting triggered, I don't like someone or something, and it shouldn't be like that, and I want to control it or get reactive over it. You know, and I'm not talking about violence. You know, I'm talking about just someone else's opinion, someone else's view. You know, nothing overreactive. But I'm talking about your response. You know, sometimes parts want to prove you wrong and say, oh, you know, if you can hold it, I'll prove you can't, and all that sort of stuff. And you know, that is kind of useful in a sense too. There can be a playfulness in that, but really, you know, it's looking in to highlight those parts. So in relationship, when your intimacy is getting stronger, you've connected, and then as the intimacy grows, you start touching on the deeper stuff inside, so you get to know each other more, and then you might that expanding intimacy and connection might touch on the empathy, might touch on some of those wounds, and you feel vulnerable and triggered, and then you might start getting reactive. So that's a highlighting point of something to work on therapeutically. So, you know, like I said, if someone doesn't like me, it's none of my business. It's their business. It's my business if they want to get up in my face and start controlling me and telling me how I should be and trying to boss me about and getting all shaming and stuff like that. Then, I can let them know how that's affecting me. But it's not my business. It's their business to take care of it. Or is it a social responsibility that we all should look after this stuff? If someone is neglected or has suffered a trauma that we don't know about, and they're getting triggered socially, what do we do? Do we call them a narcissist? Or do we recognize a part of them might be getting reactive and to defend themselves from feelings that have been damaged or hurt or not socially allowed? They might, in the environment they grow up, the feelings that you experience in the context that you grew up might have been allowed, and it's just easy to be with those feelings. But that other person might have grown up in an environment where those feelings were banned. so they got a system organized around not feeling that stuff. And you might have a system organized around not feeling something else which they find easy. But a really common one is when you've both got vulnerable wounds or shamed parts that has been buried away. You've got on life, you've moved away from it, and it's got forgotten about. But your system has built up a defense or a protective system around not going to that stuff again. So you've each got a vulnerability in the same way, but you've formed different or even similar but different responses or protectors to defend a similar thing. So you end up in like a battle of not liking each other, but you've both got a similar wound, which is hugely common. Big part of what I do in couples therapy, in the systemic group therapy, working with members of a family. They organize it in that family construct, which is a similar way, where they all kind of respond slightly differently, but they're defending a similar wound. So it gets really interesting, especially when it becomes too dangerous to even talk about it, because you might feel it, and it might be, you'll respond, and you learn that your responses cause an escalation. It's how to hold that escalation, how to hold a dialogue, rather than having to keep parts of your living experience off screen, out of the way. And then they're suffering a loss and craving life, all to fit a social coherence where a group of people have decided how it should be, because they formed and normed that kind of coherence. And there's a lot more outside of the coherence that can't be allowed in to maintain the coherence. So this is something I find really, really interested in individual work, individual coherence, couples coherence, group coherence, and what more is available to bring to the relationship. I'll just leave it there. Go well.